Yeah, basically.
I want to do 2 hours because the Verizon phone switch is back in power then, which means coming over to the repair yard.
I think that's good enough.
All right, we're ready to start?
And our next up.
Good there with the video?
Yeah, yeah.
Next up, as the flash from towers in this region, only to switch easily. That's a long drive about 10 miles.
All right, I'll go ahead and start. My name is Aaron Weaver. So I do security. I've been in security for about 6 or 7 years. Why am I talking about cars? Well, I just thought it was cool to talk about cars. I really don't work for a car company. My whole goal of this talk is to get you guys more interested in hacking cars, because I think that, we hear a lot of talks around AppSec, infrastructure, now we hear mobile, but I think we need to be doing a whole lot more research on the car side. And there's a lot of tools out there to actually help you hack your car. I guess one of the biggest things is why people don't hack their car. Well, it's how you get around, right? And who wants to push the brakes and it not work? So there is the entry of, I still want I still want to be able to get around. But what kind of interested me was, as Brunos came out with a press statement and said, hey, we are going to be coming out with R-Link. And R-Link is an Android branded device. And we're going to have App Store, and we're going to have developers. And so we need developers to come, and we need to have them on our platform. And so you're seeing more car manufacturers, coming up with app stores, using the Android system to hook up to the car. And I think, is that a fantastic idea? Yeah, all right.
Open up every backdoor possible.
So this guy, he runs, he's their chief digital officer. This is just one example. So it can be controlled by voice recognition, steering wheel. It's like, we need help. We need developers now. So there's this big push, right? Just like the App Store on the Apple side. So one of the first things I thought of was, would the interface look kind of like this? Your automobile, access to your hand-based steering wheel. Remember that? Right? Is that what that's going to look like, right? And so I first thought of, an Angry Bird kind of game, we could do with your steering wheel. It'll only work when you're apart, right? Who knows? So if you look at your car system in your car, the luxury cars, your Mercedes, will have anywhere between 50 to 70 independent microprocessors, and you're looking at 100 megabytes of compiled code, not source code. This is compiled code. So a lot of interaction going on there, a lot of different manufacturers, a lot of room for things to happen. And so most cars are still using CAN bus. So CAN bus has been around for a very, very long time. In the early 80s, CAN bus came around. And so now we're up to CAN bus, I think it's only CAN bus 2, I believe. And since, I think, 1987, the US government has said, you need to have a connector to your CAN bus, because we need to be able to do diagnostics and information like that. So we have this proprietary system, CAN bus. I mean, it's out there, the spec's out there, you can go read it. And now we're also starting to see Ethernet for cars. Now, not a lot of cars have Ethernet yet enabled. Yeah?
If I may point something out, the cable connector is called OBD-II.
Yeah, I thought that's what I said, yeah. Yeah, that's how you get to the car. I'll talk a little bit more about the OBD2 connection in a minute. So there's also Ethernet for cars. You'll see different microchips. I haven't yet run across a car that I, at least, have been able to get my hands on that has Ethernet. Does anybody have an Ethernet-enabled car yet that they know of?
They haven't made one.
It's still ideas talking about it. Right, okay. So here's what it looks like, right? You have, essentially it's controlling every single part of your car. Now, most systems are going to have at least 2 CAN buses. Now, it's because they had security in mind, and they were saying that, hey, we need to separate the ABS from your luxury, the instrument panel and the CD player, right? It was security in mind, right? I want to see somebody call me on that. It's not true, is it? Yeah. Why were CAN buses separated to begin with? Because they weren't fast enough. So it had nothing to do with security. And you can actually jump between the separate CAN buses. There's actual interconnects between these CAN buses. So here we go. Here's our OBD2 Diagnostic Connector. It's underneath your steering wheel in most cars. And technicians connect to your OBD2 connector, and they use that to figure out, hey, what's going on, what's wrong with your car. And there'll be diagnostic codes that come back from them. And it's very proprietary. There is only, obviously the car manufacturers, they don't want to share this information. Would you agree? You've done some car study. No, everything is very, very, very closed. And so trying to get information from them is hard. So you're going to have to do some reverse engineering to find that. There's a lot of now third-party OBD2 that are offering these. You can find them in many different places. Actually, before I start this, so just to talk a little bit more about, this is one of the challenges with securing your car. And that is, your car mechanic must be able to access the code and access your diagnostics to be able to do things. But so they have physical access to be able to change things. This is a problem in the security world, because how do you have to trust someone, and how do you vet, your automotive guy? Maybe you should trust him because he could do other things besides run code on your computer. But there has to be some sort of trust, and this is where systems needed to be hardened, and I'll talk about how Ford addresses this issue. But there should be certain things that an auto mechanic can do with an OBD2 connector, but he shouldn't be able to change the ECUs, which the electronic control computers. So he shouldn't be able to reprogram that. Now there is the caveat that a lot of times stuff is coming out from manufacturers. They need to do firmware upgrades. So this is the challenge in the automotive industry, and every industry is regulated by the government, and the government says, hey, you have to have this certain degree of openness in your platform. So I'm just going to show you real quick on car tuning. Are there any car tuners in here? People do tune your car? Okay, so I'll just show you what you can do with car tuning, and this is using your OBD2 connector. So it's just a short little thing. And I'm not trying to, I don't even use these guys as a company, so it's just showing you what it is.
Hey everybody, Dave here from American Muscle. Whether you know it or not, your car has a computer in it that controls all of its functions. So to speak, it's the car's brain. When Ford programmed your Mustang, they did so very conservatively. They made the car run on a low-grade octane and to give you a mediocre ride that typically was much more like a family sedan. Ford programmed these to appease the masses, not the performance enthusiasts. The easiest way to fix this? Get yourself a quality tune. This will go in and find an hidden and otherwise wasted power. A tune recalibrates your factory program, making adjustments to things such as your air-fuel ratio, your advanced timing, and countless other settings. On a stock Mustang, this is used to increase horsepower, torque, and fuel efficiency, essentially putting the muscle back in your muscle car. Now, on a stock Mustang, a tuner will certainly unleash that hidden horsepower and performance. But for the true enthusiast who's modified the vehicle, it's even more important.
All right, so that was just a little bit of information on, there are lots of auto tuners out there, and they find this information on their own. I mean, there's maybe a little bit, but when you take your Mustang back in to get worked on, they generally recommend to return to the factory settings. You can void your warranty with doing that kind of stuff, and so tuning has been around for a good long time. How long would you say tuning's been around? It's been around for 8 years. Yeah. So we've been doing it for a while. Yeah.
So two things. One, there are a couple of these tuner companies now that have licensed the software, so they did not have to break it. I don't know which ones they are, but
yeah.
And then the other thing that's going on right now is there's right-through repair laws floating around a lot of states requiring or potentially requiring the manufacturers to open it up to make it even more accessible.
Yeah.
There are also open source OBD2 applications, including some ones.
Yeah. So I did try to get some information from a friend of mine, and that's the response I got. He didn't want to disclose anything. He was working on an electric car, and that company, I guess it was charging stations for electric cars, and there was CAN bus connections there. So, talking about that right to repair, there is the Right to Repair Coalition because, we want to repair our cars. Maybe you're under the shade tree. What they call it, shade tree mechanics? Yeah. And so you want to be able to do that, and a lot of times you can't because you don't have enough information. So there is this law out there that it's not passed yet. I know that they've had it
passed it in Massachusetts this election.
Okay. All right. So here's some of the issues with CAN bus. It's a broadcast nature, right? So you're just thinking of, everybody can see all the traffic that's going across. Fragility of DOS, right? I mean, you're looking at, my CAN bus on one of my cars is, I think it's only like 56K or less than that, 22K, I can't remember, and my Toyota is 110K. So it doesn't sound like it's that fast, but I mean, look, if the messages, the CAN bus messages are very, very short. I mean, they're 8-bit, so there's not a lot to it. There are no allocator fields on there, so anybody that's on there will obviously be able to see all that traffic. You can then spoof that traffic because there's no source address there, and then there's weak access control. So vendors don't think that it's just wide open. So vendors have issued challenge responses, and there is encryption. I know on certain cars there's AES 128 encryption 256. So they can issue that, but that's something that the manufacturer has done. But on the whole, CAN security is very legacy. So if you think about this, we've got this legacy system, and it sounds a lot like the SCADA systems, right? Legacy, and now we want to connect it to all of our fancy controllers. We want to connect to the internet. We can connect it to our phones. So how's that going to work out for us? I mean, obviously there's going to be some issues there. So here's an example of CAN Shark. So about 2 or 3 years ago, 2 universities started to do a lot of research on this, and so they came up with this one program called CAN Shark. From what I can tell, is I don't believe that they have released it yet, but you can see here they've got this log, and they have some demos here, so you can unlock the doors, remove the remote start engine, self-destruct, that'd be fun to try. Kill lights, cancel remote start, lock doors. So essentially how it works is you just sniff the traffic, you sniff the CAN codes that go across, just go across like a regular bus. You look at those, and a lot of it's trial and error, trying to figure out, well, okay, so on this car, this code, is what takes the window down, or this code is what will engage the brake. You're not, like I said, you're not going to find a manual that says this is how you do it. Now there are some common codes out there, and that would be the OBD2 spec that's out there. But that OBD2 spec is simply diagnostics. It's not going to go beyond the internals of how that specific automobile manufacturer has implemented it. So here's a cheap OBD2 Diagnostic Connector. I bought it on Amazon for $14. I brought it here, and it's actually a really good platform, I believe, and I'd like to do more with it for hacking, because it's actually fairly open. It's using the ELM32 chip, which has been around for a while. You mentioned you used the ELM. Familiar with the ELM32? Elm. Anybody here use the ELM32 chip? Yeah. So that's what this is based on. ELM32 is actually just a PIC-18. So if any of you are programmed and into microcontrollers, this is what this is based on. This is a Chinese knockoff. So they actually are just in the first talk they talked about getting parts from China. Well, that's what this is, and that's why it's so cheap. You can't even buy an ELM32 chip that cheap. So the reason why I say this is a good platform is because I can take this, I've got a programmer here, and I started to do it, but I'm also running out of time, as far as, but I can reprogram this, and so I can make it do what I'd like. If I wanted to have it do stuff like Car Shark, I could do that with this. and it's very small. So if I wanted to go up into, I don't have a car to do this, so I was thinking, Justin back there gave me a great idea. He's like, go get a rental, right? And away you go. I don't know what happened to it. I just driving it, and
Well,
yeah.
make sure
So
it's a GM vehicle so you can hack into the OnStar and get your data sent back to you.
right.
Don't bother with the rental. Go work as a valet.
Ah, even better. So that's a cheap one to get into. I mean, there's lots of them out there. You can get, if anybody here used Torque? Did you use Torque back there? No? Did you get Torque people? Yeah. So you can get all those stats, and they send it over Bluetooth, and it's pretty awesome. I tried it. I'm going down the highway, and I'm going like 70 miles an hour, and I'm like, oh, cool! I can see how fast I'm going as I'm looking at my phone. My wife's like, just put that down, please. I can see the temperature. So it's going to tell you. Your last misfire, it will give you all your diagnostics. And so if you're a real gearhead, your gearhead's out there. That information's cool to you. I could really care less, but I think it is pretty interesting. So here's those chips that I talk about. You can buy those. They even have a printed circuit, so you can actually integrate that into your own build if you wanted to make your own circuit board and you wanted to put that in there. You could do that, or you could go the Chinese way and then just roll your own, which is why I think that's kind of cool. So here is that board. I just took a picture of it just to show you. This is their USB interface, and this is that chip right there. And this is the programming header. If you've ever done any programming, you can take that and you can reprogram it. I was able to pull the firmware off of here, and then I can modify it to do what I'd like. So my goal is that I'd like to make this board, modify it to do injection and different things like that. Now the interesting thing about this one is that it runs on Bluetooth, and what do you think the key is to pair it, which is hard coded in there? 0000, right? So that's cool.
Control security.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you can tell that into this, and you can send it AT commands. That's how the interface works. And it will get you back information, but you can take it a step further, create your own, and that's one way to do it. So Arduino, there's a lot of people that like to do Arduinos. You can do the same thing. They've got a nice little shield here, the CAN bus shield, and you can create your own little CAN bus network, and plug in your shield there, and you can start doing CAN hacking and seeing what's going on there with your car. And certain cars are different. So like I plugged it into a Hyundai, and I didn't see any traffic. Sometimes they firewall in a sense, off the traffic that's there, so that you don't see the actual CAN bus traffic. So sometimes you'll have to hook up to maybe a different wire. It just depends on your car. Like I know that my Toyota, I was able to hook up and see all the data. However, that little the Bluetooth couldn't keep up with the traffic, so I kept getting the buffer full, which actually they probably do have buffer overflows, but that's another thing. So here's just some examples of the different types. I mean, they have Wi-Fi, OBD2. Yeah, I would recommend that, at least running with that for any period of time. They have the little connectors, and some of these start in the range of 50 to can be anywhere between 800 to 1,000 to even more than that. Like the Fire, I believe, the Fire is rather expensive, but it does a whole lot of really cool stuff. I mean, you can really look at what is going on your CAN bus. I have a friend who's in automotive. He works in automotive, and so this is it. This is one of his interfaces that he showed me, and he hooked it up to my car, and he just showed me how that system works and how it interfaces. So, I mean, dealers, when you take it in every time, depending, they'll plug it in to see what's going on with your car. Interesting enough, there is even an option in there to deploy Airbag. So you can set off the Airbag with CAN bus commands. There are supposed to be fail-safes built in, so the car should be moving, and there should be this sensor hit and this sensor hit. Those two sensors, they've got an algorithm that decides whether that airbag deploys. But sometimes, like my brother was in an accident and the airbag didn't deploy because of the way the car was hit, and it didn't hit those sensors correctly, and so it didn't actually hit
Or
the
you have a
air.
vehicle where you can turn them off.
What's that?
My vehicle, I can turn off the airbags and turn off this
Nice.
traction control.
Okay. Well, I know that on the passengers, is that even beyond the passenger
All the
control?
airbags.
Wow.
It's a Toyota FJ Cruiser. They have buttons
Okay.
to turn off the traction control and the airbags when you're using it off-road.
Okay. Nice.
Why not turn off the ABS and mess with the fuel-air ratio as well?
So what's possible with the, what can we do in the CAN bus? Like, what kinds of things can be done? So those two papers that came out in 2010 and I think 2009, one of the things that they did with CarShark was this. So pond by CarShark, and notice that we're going 140 miles an hour, and notice where we were at. We're parked. Okay? So that's, all right, that's a fairly benign kind of thing. They were able to disable the brakes, so maybe have the left brake enabled and the right rear brake not enabled. And interestingly enough, so how did they discover this? So they were fuzzing it. So I know a lot of guys here are into application security, or how do we find bugs? We fuzz it, right? And we see what happens. So fuzzing is just sending data, and then let's look at the results of that data. So they locked the brakes, and they couldn't get them unlocked, and so they had to fuzz it and figure out. And they figured out that I think it was the 6th bit that actually unlocked that, and there was nothing that would tell them. So they thought, oh, we're going to have to go buy another. We're going to have to repair this module. And this is why it gets expensive doing some of this stuff, because either you might actually destroy a unit, or to repair it, or they had these cars up on blocks to actually figure out, because you don't want to be driving down and all of a sudden you can't, the brakes don't work anymore, right? So here's just an example. Here's the packet. So like I said, the packets are not that big. They didn't show these metal packets here, but so they had their manual override at speed, so they were able to engage the left brake at speed, and they tested all their test results. And they have a really good paper, so if you're interested in looking at more of these details, you just have to, I think it's Carsec. I have it in my notes in the end, but carsec.org, where they talk about how they did this, and they have all these different results on. Here's exactly how we did it, and here's what came out of it. So if you remember the old Need for Speed, right? So I'm trying to think of what are some scenarios, right? I think if it went under 50, the bus, then he would blow up the bus or something like that. But you can imagine some scenarios where if you had you wanted to destroy a car, or you go into a shop and I could 2 seconds in somebody's car, plug this in their OBD-II port, compromise their ECU, and maybe say in 10 days when they're driving at 60, disable their brakes. You could come up with ridiculous scenarios like that. That type of stuff, I think it definitely is possible, and it moves out of the movie realm into actual real world kind of stuff. So you might be thinking, I'd like a firewall for my car, please. Yeah. Well, they're actually, I did see one in the Golf Mini. This is kind of acting like that, where your peripheral things like your CD, DVD player, any of your entertainment systems are going through. They're going to be firewalled off from the actual, the functions that control your braking, control your any part of the car. So there are physical firewalls that they do have. Not to say that these can't be beaten. And honestly, do you know the reason why they have that in there? It's so that it wasn't for security. It was so that people can't reverse their stuff. They just didn't want them to have the code. From what I can understand, it wasn't. That's not why they put it in there. So you might be saying to yourself, well, that's all well and good, but if I have access to your car, I could go ahead and cut your brake lines, right? Okay. So how is that any different? Well, here's the reason why this all starts to become more interesting. Is because there are so many different ways now that we can communicate, right? We can communicate through a radio, TPMS, tire pressure monitoring systems, keyless entry, OBD2, which we've been talking about. We've got our internet, PSTN telematics. We even got vehicle-to-vehicle communication. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. And I know that they just did something in Michigan where I think they deployed 500 to 800 cars that are doing vehicle-to-vehicle. Is anybody familiar with the vehicle-to-vehicle? Yeah.
Yeah, they actually are allowed to do tests on the highway where they have a lead driver and all the other cars are actually unmanned, and they've done some tests with manned drives. They've done some drives in rush hour. They had a few accidents with people tailgating and hitting them. I don't know if you saw the pictures of video from that.
Yeah.
But they'll debug rear end point and correct it.
Okay. Yeah, so also like some of these vehicle-to-vehicle communications, it'll also be able to say, you have sensors along the road, and it'll be able to send marketing messages to your car, right? There's a McDonald's up on the right. That won't be abused, right? I don't think so. Or, the cars that are coming towards you just came out of rain, and so they'll be broadcasting to your car to say, car, turn on my windshield wipers so I get ready. I'm going to be going into rain in a minute or two here. So that kind of stuff is going to be coming, and actually almost every one of these, in just a little bit of attacks that have been done, have all been compromised.
So when's the Metasploit module coming out?
Yeah, exactly. Metasploit for cars, right? TPMS I'll talk a little bit about. That's been compromised. Keyless entry, there are some attacks on that side. Let's go to the next one. So TPMS system, tire pressure monitoring system. I just love it. I kind of find the TPMS system annoying, but TPMS, you have that in your cars. Familiar with it? Where it'll tell you, okay, which tire is it?
An absolute pain in the rear end.
They are.
You know how to fix it?
What's that?
Not too much air in it.
No. Take all the sensors out.
Because then it says when it broadcasts.
No. Take all the sensors out. Get a piece of 4-inch PVC pipe. Glue a cap on one end. Put a screw cap on the other end. Put a fitting valve. Put air pressure in there. Throw all 5 of them in there. Screw it shut. Hit it with air pressure. Throw it in the trunk.
Nice.
Yeah, I like that.
Because in Pennsylvania, they won't pass you on emissions.
Yeah, I know.
If the light's on,
Right.
and if you put aftermarket rims on an off-road truck or anything, if you put aftermarket rims on anything,
okay,
sometimes the sensors won't fit.
Okay.
Just throw them all in a PVC pipe, hit it with air up to the pressure till the light goes off, throw it in the trunk.
I like that. So I guess it wouldn't surprise anybody that the communication between your TPMS device and your car is not encrypted. It's actually a number, or pretty much a serial number that's broadcasted. It's broadcasted every 30 to 60 seconds once your car goes above 5 miles an hour. So you can do all sorts of things. The other funny thing about it too is this guy was doing some research on it, and he fuzzed it, and so he was able to turn that light on and off. So we could just fuzz it. We could just fuzz it off completely, and he was able to disable it. There was all sorts of things because they're not doing input validation. So in AppSec we always talk about cross-site scripting, SQL injection. Well, you could do the same thing in cars, right? They're not doing input validation on any of the stuff that's coming in. So here's an example of what would it look like if you took apart one of your TPMS sensors. Nice.
Put them all in PVC pipe. Sorry.
So
mark it in case the cops find it in your trunk.
Yeah, what is that? So all devices have the FCC ID. So if you want to figure out what a device is or what it's doing in your car, go to the FCC and they'll tell you all about it, which is really cool because they'll give you actual images of it because they have to go through a certification process. And so you get to figure out exactly what microprocessor they're using. You'll find out exactly what that sensor does. So really cool. So one of the ideas they came up with is if you're trying to do some of this stuff is you can really easily, they use the GNU radio to intercept that traffic, that radio traffic, and it goes a remarkably far distance. So what you do is you set up one that falsely broadcasts that your tire pressure is low, and then you make a deal with this with a gas station for a cut to you know, have their tires looked at, and so that's a way to make money with your with tire pressure monitoring system. OnStar. So somebody in here mentioned OnStar. One of the things these guys did in 2010 was the way OnStar communicates. They actually use modem because they want to be able to, anywhere you are, you know, whether you're 3G, 2G, or 1G, they want to be able to communicate. So it's only at like 300 baud, and it's actually, you know, 300 baud, and so they were able to replay, you know, that process, and they were able to connect to the OnStar system. They were able to find a buffer overflow, and they found that there was an FTP server running, and they wrote a little exploit that was only, I think, 300 or 400 bytes, and that installed an IRC server. And so they had two cars that were 1,500 miles apart. They had both compromised them, and then they both checked into their IRC bot, and they then had the car, you know, play noise. I mean, so you can imagine, now that they have access to your OBD-II CAN bus connection, pretty much they can do anything they'd like. And so they were just doing, that's just a benign attack. But they also had it tweeting the location of the car every, you know, few minutes. So there's a lot of things that are out there. And so that's why I say, I feel like this field is, you know, ripe for finding vulnerabilities. And so here, this is just a screen I mocked up. You know, this is actually from a botnet, but this is not real, obviously. But is it that far-fetched to imagine a service? I don't know if you ever followed Preps on security. He talks a lot about botnets and different things like that. So yeah, I think I can imagine a system where, you know, you have these bots installed on cars, and then as a service, you know, they subscribe to you, and they pay you to unlock the car. And you say, I want the car unlocked at 7 o'clock or 9 o'clock. The guy gets in, pays you $200, and he drives off with it and deals with it. Plausible, yes, no, or is it made up? So it's made up now, but I don't see why it wouldn't happen. So to me, that is a real, you know, this term APT, right? I hate that term. So I figured a better word for it is automotive persistent threat, right? And rebranded as that. So this is from that paper, Comprehensive Experimental Analysis of Automotive Attack Surfaces, a great long name there. But I think you can see that same sort of migration, right? Just like our phones, you know, from individual attacks to mass exploitation, worms and viruses, to third parties selling compromised hosts as services. You know, I can see that progression, same progression happening here. So here's an example. This happened, I think, a year or two ago, where an employee was working for a company, and they use this for repossessing cars. So it's for, you know, people that may not always make their payments. So what they can do is
pay by the weak places.
What's that?
They pay by the weak places, like JD Buy Rider and stuff. You know, you buy the car here.
Yeah.
And they shut it off, and they bring it back, and they sell it to somebody else.
Right. So they can, so they can beep the horn, shut the car off, flash the lights, all those kinds of things. So this guy got fired. He didn't like how he was fired. And all of a sudden, you know, all these cars weren't starting, their horns were going off, and so it was just simple access. They didn't revoke this guy's access to the web portal that disabled it, and so now he's disabling his car. So that's one of the, you know, more recent examples of, you know, what could be happening here. So this is my friend again. He's talking about. I said, because my question to him was, how concerned are the automotive manufacturers with CAN bus security? Are they thinking about it? And he said, absolutely, they were thinking about it. And so here's an example of my Ford Touch. Anybody drive the Ford with my Ford Touch? I don't, but so I'm going to show you some examples from Michael Westra. He works for Ford Security, and he gave a really good talk on BSides up in Michigan earlier this year. But one of the things that they said that they did was, earlier this year, they had to do an upgrade because there were some usability issues with my Ford. And so to each customer, they sent out a USB stick, you know, the letter saying, here's how you upgrade your car, right? So I thought of, here's, well, couldn't we just? I was thinking all sorts of things with that, but why couldn't I just print up a letter saying, from Ford, please upgrade your system, and hand them the, mail them the USB, and would they plug it in and would they upgrade their system? I probably think yeah. And I was just on their website today, and so their recommended way to get updates, firmware updates, is download the firmware from the internet, stick it on your USB drive, and then go to your car and stick it in. That's how these upgrades take place. No possible problem for yeah. I think there's some not opportunities, but I think there's some things that could be looking at there.
Has anybody registered the website Ford.cm?
I know. That's a good idea, right? They also came up with this OpenXC architecture, and you'll see that a lot of this is going back to that same type of chip that I was talking about here, microchip, but essentially having a set of APIs that would tell you the state of your computer, of your car, and then there being like this sort of firewall of sorts, and like some RESTful APIs that your phone would talk to, and that would be exposed. So that's called the OpenXC architecture. I don't think that's going to go anywhere because I just looked at their site again, and they haven't updated anything there. So again, it's like they promised to be open, but then it didn't actually happen, from what I can tell, or maybe something's there. So here we can see a parking brake activation, and then it's actually sent off to your app, which would then read that part right there. So this I took from Mike Wester when he was speaking. So these are the kinds of things that Ford's thinking about. So the car manufacturers do have this on their mind. They are looking at security, right? So they're saying a successful attack should require physical access to the internals of the module. So they're saying if you have, just like any device, if you actually have physical control, it's really hard to defend against attack. It shouldn't be able to immediately transfer from one device to another, kind of like a worm. But I think that vehicle-to-vehicle communication might possibly lend itself to that in the future. General perimeter security architecture, including hardware, we should protect the most important components. So it's kind of getting into that. Since we can't protect, we have to open it up here. Let's protect what we can as well as we can. So that's what they were looking for. External non-hardwired or user interfaces should be hardened with multiple layers of protection. So Ford definitely is, they have a security program for this. I don't know about the other cars manufacturers, but I know Ford is definitely out there, and they're actually doing something about that. Protect the vehicle interface at all costs. So really, if you get onto the CAN bus network, it's game over from a security standpoint. So you have to protect that as well as you can. And so there's going to be like these interconnects, My Ford Touch. They're going to try and firewall off and only allow certain access to the car network. Because you can imagine, you've got duals and we're having quad-core processor phones coming out. What kind of denial of service could your phone just do on your car network? Because you're looking at, like the chip on here is, it's only running at maybe 16 megahertz. So you can imagine it would be very easy to overwhelm that CAN bus network. And so they're only trying to give that, only do what's mandated by law. And really, if any of these manufacturers fail, that gives their whole industry a black eye. So this company, it's a Bertell, I can't remember the name of this company. Battelle. Is anybody familiar with Battelle? I hadn't heard of Battelle. But Battelle's a large research company, and evidently they're doing a lot of research into car automotive hacking. And so just this last, in September, they sponsored where they had high school and college students come and work with their technicians. And they kind of had a car hackathon, which I think is really cool to spur some more innovation in this area as far as security researchers are concerned. So here's just an example, BMW App Center, right? So I can, I can Twitter out, right from my car. I guess, I don't know why I want to do that.
Who would subscribe to that?
What's that?
Who would subscribe to that?
Kevin Smith, he's too fat to fly.
I don't know.
We already have those text and drive laws. Why do we need Twitter in the car itself?
Yeah, well, it's controlled with your steering wheel buttons. It's just what I want to do. Here's Cadillac. Cadillac has Q. So these are the different systems. So we were talking. You mentioned the Google car, right?
Yeah, it's the street map camera.
Yep. So this is So this is actually one of those self-drivable cars, which they say has not had too many accidents. I think
well,
that
all
was pretty
accidents
good.
were human caused.
Right.
The car itself is caused.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's
So
one
this is using that the LiDAR, right?
That was human driven.
That was a human-driven one?
Yes, that was a human driven map car. Yeah, and
there was a deer standing in front of it and the camera behind caught the deer laying on the road.
Nice.
Nice.
So this is the LiDAR on top. This is doing the imaging, providing that 3D model with the laser. I think it's using 60 points. And so in Nevada recently, right, they just did their, hey, you can allow cars to drive on the road. Right now it has to have a human, but that'll probably change at some point. Yeah. And then I found this just recently. There's this other, it's got the dumbest name. Webinos. Has anybody heard of that operating system?
That is dumb.
What's that?
You're right, that is dumb.
Yeah.
Which operating system?
It's called Webinos, and the other term that they're using is Secure Web Operating System Application Delivery Environment. It's a mouthful. So this is BMW's integration of that. So that's another standard out there that's evolving that wants to connect your interface this with your car system. Just another avenue. One of the ideas that I thought about was what would happen if you were able to jam this system right here? Would this car stop? Could I use it? I've been to Kenya a lot, and what they do a lot over there is thieves will just put roadblocks out, right, and then they'll take the car from you. So I guess a modern version of that would be if you jam the laser, then the car stops. Now you have them right where you want it. And so you don't even have to put out a physical barrier. You can essentially put out a virtual barrier. I don't know. I just thinking of different scenarios of like what happens when these cars can drive by themselves. You remember good old Monk? I remember one episode where they modified the GPS system, and the guy dutifully followed his GPS into a he followed it into a warehouse. Or this parking lot in the side, bad section of town, and then the guy rolled down his window for whatever reason. It's a movie, right? It's a movie. Anyway, the guy got shot, right? And so he's saying, I'm going to Skyline Resort, and so with our interconnect here, is it possible to, obviously yes, like we can hack the GPS system on a car, especially a self-driven car, and all of a sudden it's going where it's not supposed to go. Can we do those kinds of things? One of the other things I want to show is there's lots of different ways to. If you're into electronics, this is an analyzer, so I can do CAN bus sniffing with this. This will pretty much look at anything, any kind of electrical signal. This is put out by SA Logic, but I can decode, and it's USB based, so I can hook this to the 2 pins on my car. And I can look at all the CAN bus traffic, and it'll decode it for me. Now I can't inject in there, but I can look for a lot of things, and then I can write my own API if I wanted to off of it. So that's just another way to do it. If you have a logic analyzer, you can access that. So that's pretty much my talk. I mean, my real goal of this was to get people interested in this, and that it really is a low entry. And just one more thing. I'll take your question in just a second. You can also, we were talking about this earlier, is you could buy an ECU, like the actual main controller, from a junk car, right? And you could set up in your own lab, and some people do this where they have it set up in their lab. You could set up your own little lab to actually fuzz certain manufacturers. Because that's the problem is I wouldn't recommend fuzzing. Like I said, I would not recommend fuzzing your car. You just never know. That's just like a really bad idea. Yeah.
Have you read much about the new 2-wire E-Trans interface to try to implement instead of CAN?
I've looked at it. Is that the FlexRay or is that a different protocol?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I've looked at it, but that's as far as I've gotten with it. Yeah.
Right. Have you read the white paper on auto plug that the engineering department did?
I think
The wireless plug and play system that interfaces with all the ECUs?
no, I don't think I've read that one yet.
The other thing, if you look at Battelle,
Yes.
Battelle doesn't have any operations in Michigan. They're all down by Atlantic City Airport and in Virginia and
Yeah.
other places where every proving grounds. So they're not really working for the auto industry. They're looking at ways.
Oh, right.
They're probably looking at ways to disable vehicles to clear them out for things that are coming out of the Grand Challenge to get around.
Okay.
So if you've got autonomous vehicles delivering supplies to a warfighter, you want to have a way of shutting down the other vehicles on the road so you can get around them.
Yeah.
That's probably what Battelle is.
Okay.
Battelle is trying to get Detroit's business. That's why they put on.
Is that?
Or the lobbyist is going to mandate every vehicle has to have it.
I mean, that's going down the line too, and they see a market there, so that's what they're trying to do with that.
Well, but a lot of those folks, they're actually teaching scout missions and things like that. They're doing that on somewhat protected systems, but they're also usually larger scale, more complicated, they're not going through the CAN bus. A lot of other systems. And they've got redundant sensors, because a lot of them they're also doing off-road systems as well. So they've got a lot of redundant sensors. It doesn't work great in the field. They've got other systems.
With some of the current self-driving cars, they actually do disable themselves when they get into an accident.
Do they?
At least with the DARPA self-driving challenge, somebody rammed the Microsoft Escalade on where the stop sign and pushed into the intersection and disabled himself.
Nice. Nice.
One thing that is kind of concerning to expand on what you said about the GPS, there have been instances of actual military and DHS grade drones getting hacked with like $1,000 worth of equipment.
Right.
So if that's getting hacked with $1,000 worth of equipment, what's going to happen to all these automobiles that wind up having all this kind of stuff?
But the fact of the matter, because of the distance from the flight controllers going up a satellite down, the problem is most of the stuff on the drones wasn't encrypted.
Right.
So you could pick up the nose camera feed and everything without having.
Supposedly it's still not encrypted.
It is because of the distance from Nellis up to the satellites back then.
Yeah.
And that's how you took the Sentinel.
Yeah.
It's a program that once they lose the controller signal, they fly back to the airfield they were launched from. So you spoof GPS and make it land in a different field.
Yeah. Nice.
They're not actually high tech.
All right. Well, thank you.